and welcome to episode 131 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for anyone else who likes going out under the stars. How was your week, Shane?
It was really good, and I really enjoyed the double star episode with Blake. I thought that was just a super fun conversation, and sort of renewed. Not that I've never not had interest in the double stars, but I've been neglecting that list a little bit lately. So I need to put some focus on it. So take advantage of these warm nights and some double star observing.
Yeah, I like what. I liked a lot of what Blake talked about from his time as an astronomer in residence at Calamity Park recently to the double stars, and then some of the other observing. Like he was saying, he's a generalist, which he really is. Like he's into a whole variety of different things, from doing some imaging and some citizen science to double stars and deep sky observing. He's kind of got an iron in all the astronomical fires. So, it's really interesting to talk to him and get that different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was really good. As for my week, not a lot of observing. Two things to report. Maybe I'll start with the pencil Borg that seemed to get a little bit of interest from some listeners based on the emails that we received. So when I reported last week, I said I was only the biggest part of this thing that maybe disappointed me was the inability to get most of my eyepieces to focus. In fact, I could only get two to focus, which, right. I didn't try them all, but the 24 millimeter Panoptic and the 13 millimeter Nagler, they're parafocal. So, makes sense that they would both work. But even on any of my other telescopes, they require a lot of outward focus travel to achieve focus. So it meant that anything that was requiring more inward focus just wouldn't work. Now, I was using my TeleVue 1.25 inch mirror diagonal. I swapped that out for a prism, and like I mentioned, prisms typically have a shorter light path, and that was indeed the case. I was able to get focus with the Panoptic, and I had probably another 10 millimeters or so. I think I didn't measure it, but it looked like about 10 millimeters of travel distance. So that extra 10 millimeters has allowed basically any eyepiece to work now with this little telescope. So that's encouraging.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I ordered some laser pointer rings that mount on a finder shoe, and they will easily
really big shoe.
Yeah,
big.
they will accommodate my really tiny telescope. So it'll be a way to mount it as a finder scope, and I'll play around with it that way, I think, for a little while and just see how I like it. So that's the pencil Borg update.
Well, look, I got to ask the question that everybody's been waiting to hear. How does the binocular work in it?
I don't know if I'm going to get there. That would be the most ridiculous thing ever.
Well, look, you're the one that bought a 25 millimeter telescope.
Yeah, I know. I opened myself up to this level of ridicule, so
wow.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Oh wow, we can't even publish what I said. But
that's right. Yeah, we'd have to put an age warning on our podcast.
I don't think that's suitable for any age.
No, you're probably right. Yeah. So
I'll never be old enough.
I didn't get any. Well, I shouldn't say any. I did not get any nighttime observing in. I did look at the sun a little bit, both in white light and hydrogen alpha. There was a large group of small sunspots, and I think there was about 8 to 10. I can't remember how many I counted. Sort of in a arcing line in the southern hemisphere, nearing the limb. So that was kind of neat, and a lot of granulation was visible and in white light, using moderate power. I should have probably used a little bit more, but and then in hydrogen alpha, again, there's always so much detail to see in hydrogen alpha. What I will say though is the prominences were there's always prominences when you observe hydrogen alpha. I don't recall ever using my H alpha telescope and not seeing prominences. It's more just like the it's how many you see and how large are they in different shapes and that sort of stuff. When I was observing, they weren't that grand. There wasn't many of them, and they weren't super big or doing wild and crazy things. Nonetheless, still enjoy it. It's still a fun way to observe and just get a little telescope time in during the daytime. So I will continue the solar observing as much as I can all summer. Just, there's lots to see on the sun right now with the solar cycle ramping up to maximum.
Cool.
So how was your week, Chris?
It was good. It was clear on Monday night or whatever it was. And maybe it was Sunday night. And I'd done so much observing. I was thinking about going out, but yeah, I just probably shouldn't have gone out. And I didn't go out because I was already pretty tired from whatever I did, like 5 or 6 nights, while I was on vacation. So yeah, I didn't go out. I did order. What did I order? I ordered the final part to take the comet catcher to 2-inch for eyepieces. So I'm eager to get that, and then eager to try. And Mike doesn't know this yet, but I think I'm going to try to see if I can use his 20 millimeter Nagler in it one night just to kind of get the feel for it. And then, hopefully eventually get a lower power 2-inch eyepiece that will work with that telescope.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm thinking of getting a 25 millimeter Plossl for this little pencil board. Like you mentioned last week, the 24 millimeter panoptic, the field stop on there is like close to, I think it is 30 millimeters. It far exceeds the actual aperture of the telescope. So I, would like to maximize the field of view with this little thing. And I think a 25 millimeter Plossl is probably about the sweet spot for it. So I might order what I would
recommend. I don't know if they make one in 25 millimeters or not, but I bought from Agena Astro Systems the 32 millimeter, just like their store branded one, like whatever it's called. And a lot of people on Cloudy Nights had made some very positive reviews, that it's not like top tier, but it's very, very close. They've tweaked the design a little bit for Agena. Okay. And I was blown away by how good the 32 millimeter is. It's super light. The optics are, surprisingly sharp for, I think I paid like $30 for it or something like that. And then it's got blackened edges. There's, good reflection control, nice eye cup. Like, considering the price, I can't really say anything negative about it. But what sticks out for me is the quality, I think, will be acceptable for you. And and then as well, because it's so lightweight, and that telescope may benefit from a lighter weight optic.
Yeah, for sure.
Something to think about.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The reason I was going with the 25 was just to try to get the magnification a little higher. So 25 millimeter gives me a 7 times magnification. 32 is about 5.5 times. So close. You know what? I maybe what I'll try is my 32 millimeter TAC Abbey ortho. It's not as wide as the Plossl, but more so just to test that level of magnification. And if I like it, then maybe get the Plossl for a little extra field of view there, and see how that works.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if there's an Agena in that 25 millimeter size for you. But we had some exciting news this week, eh?
We did, yeah. So the predominant, or maybe the only, I don't know if it's the only Canadian astronomical magazine, but definitely the largest subscriber base, Sky News magazine, had a article on the podcast, and one of our frequent listeners, and person that we exchange a lot of emails with, Eric from the Calgary RASC Center, interviewed us, and then had the article printed as well. He's a contributing editor, I think, to the magazine, or I'm not sure what his title is in the magazine.
We'll call him that. We'll give him a promotion here with all the due responsibilities.
Yeah. So anyway, the interview was a ton of fun. Like, when we had that conversation with Eric, that was a couple months ago now, I think.
February.
Yeah, we had a lot of laughs, and it was a fun discussion. And I think he did a great job translating that into print. Yeah,
no, it was really good. It was exciting to see. And then I think maybe as a result of that, I noticed that we've actually moved up significantly in the Canadian rankings. We're the number 2 astronomy podcast in Canada now.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool too. So thanks for everybody listening. We really appreciate that, and it certainly, in a way, motivates us, I think, or motivates me anyway. It's just nice to know people are listening.
Yeah, no, it is. It is super nice, and we had some other like really nice correspondence from people writing some just super nice emails, and I think that it's one of the sort of surprising things. You know, often you don't hear that about putting stuff out on the internet, and often there can be negative comments by people. I don't really think we've ever really had a negative comment. I'm certainly not inviting them, but I think the only one we ever had was somebody, I think, just tuned in. They were just like looking for like general podcasts on generalized topics, and then they were like, "Oh, well, like if you want to listen to like a good podcast, try this other one." It was like something on literature or something. It was a completely different topic. So
yeah, like an Australian professor or something he recommended. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
yeah, and that's so that's fine. Also, Jim posted on Cloudy Nights in the Beginners Forum this week, which was a surprise to me. I didn't know. Our friend Bill sent me a link to it. So thanks, Jim. Yeah, there were lots of nice comments from folks. I poked around on Cloudy Nights, but I usually don't go poking around to see if people are mentioning the podcast. And people were saying some positive things there as well. So I was like, oh, well, that's really nice. If people are Cloudy Nights members, we try to do this kind of in a bit of a Cloudy Nights way, because we've both been long fans of Cloudy Nights, but neither of us really contribute all that much to Cloudy Nights, because I think there's lots of amazing contributors on there. Many people have more experience, I know, than I do in a lot of the topics, Shane. So I'm more of a reader. But yeah, certainly how people write and respond has certainly, I think, guided us in much of our topics on this podcast.
Yeah, Cloudy Nights has been an awesome resource for me during my entire amateur astronomer career. And I go there frequently still. I always enjoy the conversations, particularly centered around gear that I'm using or that I'm thinking about, or observing that I'm currently doing and or thinking about. So it's a wonderful community. There's a wealth of experience and knowledge in the contributions there, and then the beautiful part about it all is it's recorded for eternity. So there's a lot of great resource material there that you can reference. Again, like if you're thinking about an eyepiece or a telescope, you can ask Chris and I, but you and I have only used what we've used, which is not everything that's out there. So I'm always hesitant. In fact, I really don't provide any kind of comments usually on stuff that I've never used. I can tell you what I think of stuff I have used, but I think it was even last week when we recorded, we talked about the subjectivity of like eyepieces. How some people love and some people hate the Pentax XW 20 millimeter. It's just one of those things, it's hard to find a definitive, it's hard to find a predictor of how you will enjoy or not enjoy a particular piece of gear. But if you take in a lot of different perspectives, which is what Cloudy Nights provides, it can help you form a bit of a guesstimate as to how you may like or not like something.
Cool. And we had talked a little bit about the sky quality meter, the SQM meter, last week, and not only was Bill nice enough to send us that link to the bit of promo that Jim had done on Cloudy Nights, but Bill also had responded. Maybe I'll just go ahead and read this.
Yeah. Sure.
So regarding the sky quality meter, or the SQM, Bill writes, "Hey guys, interesting your takes on the SQM. I've had one since." And I should say, for those that don't realize, so Bill is sort of a longtime astronomy friend of mine, and he's been a longtime listener of the show, and he's an extremely experienced amateur astronomer. So kind of if you're getting the drift, I kind of would defer to Bill a little bit, maybe in some matters, than necessarily what I say. So anyway, with that, Bill says, I've had an SQM meter since its early days, and bring it out most times when I'm observing. I use it to add to the document of the night sky conditions to go in my log. Site's SQM readings can actually change to a degree from night to night. It usually depends on transparency. In February, Doug Welsh, one of the co-creators of SQM, gave a talk on Zoom to the Victoria Centre of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. It was interesting, and it's saved up on YouTube. And if anybody has time to spare, Shane, he included a link for us. If we can tweet that out, maybe that would be awesome.
For sure.
Yeah, he goes on to say, I believe he's this is Doug Welsh. I believe Doug Welsh is an Ottawa member of the RASC, and he might actually make a good guest on the podcast. Yeah, that could be interesting. Just actually kind of go to the source instead of us just shooting from the hip. That's a good idea. If we were journalists, we probably would have done that in the beginning. Yeah,
it's a great suggestion.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, I've kind of got it queued up to watch next time I'm on the bike. It's important to know when it reads the sky and how to use it properly. The original version reads a 90-degree cone of the sky. If there is something blocking part of this zone, then the reading will say darker. On the other hand, if the Milky Way is directly overhead, especially the sparkling Cygnus region, then the reading will say the sky is brighter than it is. I found this at the top of Mount Koba, which is a famous place here in Western Canada that a star party takes place on. There is now a narrower zone version, so you can pinpoint the darkness of the area you are thinking of observing. Personally, I don't worry about that too much. I just give the object a try and find out if the object was visible on that night. Chris, I am with you on the Bortle scale. I always find it interesting when someone calls a site Bortle whatever when they've never been there and it's many hundreds of kilometers from where they live. Bortle measurements need to be done live. They too can change based on sky conditions and what one actually sees. This also brings up eyesight, which is a whole different can of worms. As always, enjoyed the podcast, Bill. Well, thanks so much, Bill. Really appreciate the email.
Yeah, that was really good. And I certainly have very, very, very limited experience with the SQM, so any kind of insight is definitely appreciated, and it does help to explain a little bit of the variance probably in the readings that in the readings that I've seen when I've been out under some dark skies.
Yeah, exactly. And then Charlie chimed in as well. Do you want to read Charlie's email, sort of a different perspective?
Yeah. This is also interesting on the sky quality meter. And again, this is just a side note here, a surprise. I wasn't sure. I didn't know that we would, receive 2 emails on SQM. This is sort of a niche piece of equipment that, anybody can buy, but typically not many people have them. But anyway, Charlie wrote, hi, Chris and Shane. I picked up a sky quality meter shortly after I got my Stellina observing station, and have been trying to remember to carry it with me and use it whenever I go out observing, whether Stellina or visually. My methodology is to hold it up around eye level and to make a reading facing in each of the cardinal compass points and to average the readings. If I have made readings on multiple occasions from a given location, I then average the averages to get a master value for that location. I try to remember to make readings about an hour after the end of astronomical twilight. My experience has been that my readings on any given night in any location have all been within 1 magnitude / arc second
caret 2.
Yeah. And that is held true even for the location where I have 7 sets of readings. Since I am hand holding the SQM and can only see it from one direction, it may not always point directly to the zenith for each reading. And when I actually press the button, I'm sure I'm changing its orientation. But I'm attributing most of the variation between sequential readings to variations in the amount of haze that is passing overhead. So also some good insight there from Charlie on the SQM.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's kind of neat. So like we were saying, and I think what these folks are telling us, Shane, is I think I may even still have an SQM reader on my desk, just not at my desk today. And I should grab it. Maybe we can play around with it a bit this summer.
That would be
see what
fun.
we can find out, because that kind of gives a little bit better direction, I guess, maybe from my perspective. And I know that you're a fan of keeping things pretty simple too. It would just be another thing to have out. I like just to look at the stars and say, okay, tonight it's pretty dark. I can see a 5.8 magnitude star or a 6.1 magnitude star from my site. That's probably about the best night I've ever had, would be maybe 6.1 here. I like to use that because I feel like that's just like so universally. If I say straight up overhead, that's how faint I can see. I feel like that really, it's very simple, and that's kind of how I do it. But they are kind of neat devices. I was really excited when they came out, and then I was able to obtain one, just to play around with it. And I certainly did at first, but then after a while, I just kind of, I took on sketching, I think, and that's where all my observing energy went. Okay. Ben wrote us an email. I'm not sure if you saw this one, Shane. Ben's in Australia.
Yes, I did read this one. Yeah, this is a super cool email.
Yeah, I thought it was neat. Do you mind if I take a read of it?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Ben writes, "Hi, Chris and Shane. Firstly, thank you for sharing your love of visual astronomy through your twice weekly episodes. I live in a part of Australia that is largely disconnected from any astronomy community. The nearest club is 500 kilometers away, and the nearest star party is over 3,400 kilometers for a round trip. As such, you guys have become my vicarious observing buddies, and any less than 2 episodes a week would see me in a state of astro withdrawal." Uh-oh.
Yeah, pressure's on.
Yeah, I think we can somewhat, we're in a somewhat similar position in a way, Shane, I think, because we live in an area that is very, I think it's like the least populated area in North America, except for like above the Arctic Circle. As far as being down in the lower latitudes, or the mid latitudes of the Northern Hemisphere, I don't think there's another area that has as few people as Saskatchewan does. It's very sparsely populated here.
Yeah. We have two larger, well, for our province, 2 large cities of about, I think, 250 to 300,000 per city. And then outside of that, it's very spread out. There's not many people, in concentrations. So yeah, as a result, the light pollution is, far less than a lot of other more populated areas.
For reference, we are 5 times larger than England.
In land size?
Yeah, in land size, yeah. And we have just about 1 million people, plus or minus.
Yeah,
So that can kind of give people a pretty good reference there. So I don't know how many people live in the UK. I should have looked that up. That would have given better context. But anyway, I'll go on. He goes on to say, if you would allow me to indulge, I'd like to share 2 stories with you. The first refers to a comment Chris mentioned in episode 229 about his friend that had an early astronomy experience under pristine sky and may have been ruined by it. I too had a similar experience. This experience, I think, when I wrote him back, I said, I think this wins the Observation of the Month award.
Mm-hmm.
I was about 18 months into my astro journey when a friend of mine invited me to observe at his observatory, which is a 3.5-hour drive, to a location where there's no evidence of human-made light, and the skies can only be described as pristine in a 360-degree unobstructed view. The zodiacal light stretches almost to the zenith, and the Milky Way lights up the landscape in a way that I can only compare to a dim nightlight in my child's bedroom. We lay on the deck chairs, pointing out numerous deep sky objects naked eye: the Trifid, the Lagoon, Omega, Eagle, nebulae. When we went to the eyepiece of his 24-inch f4.2 Dobsonian, the Trifid had striking pink and blue colors behind dark dust lanes. Jupiter looked like a Hubble image with brown, gray, red, and white shades spread throughout, festoons and lines across the surface. And we spent considerable time observing one of the Galilean moons as an obvious sphere transiting Jupiter's surface.
This, when I read this, I just couldn't believe like and I don't mean that in like a challenging way. It was just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. This is a bucket list night for sure. And very few people, I think, get that experience.
Yeah, and he said they could see nebulosity and the spiral arms of galaxies, and he said he knew it was a special night, even though he was limited in his experiences at that time, and he's since gone to obtain a 16-inch custom Dob, and yeah, I mean that seems like a pretty good telescope. So he said he recently had a coffee with that friend and commented that, well, I was always appreciative of every invitation he offers to his site. It had ruined me. It was met with a fit of laughter and a quiet, yeah, sorry. So yeah, that's awesome. So a second story that he relates to us has to do with reflectors. I'm a lover of Dobsonians and have a Skywatcher 130p Heritage as my grab and go that I really enjoy using. I have never had any desire to own a refractor or Schmidt over a Dob. However, a week ago, secondhand Celestron 6-inch Macasser came onto the market in my town. That's a rare event. Being offered by a person in their 80s and just couldn't observe anymore. It came with a focal reducer and a solar filter, and he only wanted 100 Australian dollars for it. Wow. I expected it to be broken, but to my surprise, it was in perfect working order. Obviously, that is not something to walk away from. So I now own my first Macasser telescope. I have to say that ignoring what these little telescopes can do has been a major oversight. I mean, I love that it's 3 telescopes in one, 6-inch f10 without the reducer, a 6-inch f6.3 with the reducer, and a 6-inch solar scope. I've never observed the sun, and I'm now out in the garden day and night with this little telescope. Kind of reminded me of you, Shane.
Yeah.
I have done a lot of reading in the first few years of the hobby, but never realized the versatility they offer. Thanks for doing what you do. Keep it up. Regards, Ben. Thanks so much, Ben.
Those C6s are amazing, I think. Like they really punch above their weight. Like I had never really considered one, due to aperture and, when you factor in the central obstruction. But there's been a couple club members here locally that have had C6s. And whenever I've looked through them, I'm just astonished by how good they are. Like they're really fantastic.
Yeah, I've looked through a couple and agree. I almost had bought one at one point in time, but that's when just right before I made the purchase, my 6-inch Maksudov had come up for sale as a used telescope, and I was able to get it for about half the price of the C6. So anyhow, yeah, very cool. Brett wrote us on the Altoids variable LED light, which he sent us the post that he made on cloudy nights about his LED red light with the potentiometer. But I had read that. I knew who this person was as soon as I saw that, because I remember reading that post. But do you want to go ahead and read this email?
Yeah, sure. So Brett writes, hope you're both doing well. As always, thank you for the podcast. I look forward to listening to it every week. A few recent episodes inspired me to write in with a couple of thoughts. And I also have a question that I'd like to submit, either as a standalone answer or perhaps as a topic for a future episode. So number one, Shane mentioned wanting to do more lunar observing this summer, especially trying to look at it in each of its phases. I just finished the Astronomical League's Lunar Observing Program and highly recommend it. The lunar features on the list have a good variety of geographical locations, so it encourages you to look at different times to get the lighting just right for the shadows to highlight the feature you're searching for. I found myself observing multiple evenings in a row to try to catch the shadows just right. And that's a great recommendation, the Astronomical League's Lunar Observing Program. The Royal Astronomical Society of Canada also has the, why am I drawing a blank?
Isabel Williamson.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, which is another fantastic lunar program. And what I really like about the RASC's program is there's sort of the general or the standard program, but then they list a whole bunch of like challenge features to see on the moon as well. And some of those features require larger apertures, but it really gives you a large volume of observing work to do if you're interested in the moon.
Nice.
So Brett goes on to say here, number 2 point, not sure if this will be of any interest, but I thought I'd share just in case. You recently brought up using red lights with an adjustable brightness level. When I was starting out, and then in brackets, a whopping 1 year ago, I was interested in purchasing an astronomy light with adjustable levels and found a thread on cloudy nights where someone mentioned building their own. After some research, which I believe also brought up an article from Sky and Telescope, I decided to try and build my own. I had no experience whatsoever in hobby electronics, but after a bit of YouTube University, I gave it a go. I think it turned out just fine and have enjoyed using it over the past several months. He gave us a link to the Cloudy Nights thread that he posted this in, but if you just do an internet search for Cloudy Nights and then Altoids tin LED, you'll find it quite easily.
It's amazing.
And it's a great read. Even if people you don't want to build a flashlight, go read this. It's awesome.
People should read it. It looks so amazing. It just like, it's an Altoids container. Everybody knows what an Altoids container looks like. Probably it's just like a little tin can. I think Altoids they're kind of like a mint of some sort, aren't they? Am I remembering this right?
Mint or like cough candy or something like that.
Something like that. Anyway, they had like this sort of unique sort of that they don't look old timey, but it's a very prominent kind of tin. And then he figured out a way to make it into an LED. It has like a switch on it and everything. Looks super, super cool. Anyway, I just love that. I'd read the article when he had posted it on Cloudy Nights, and of course, I hadn't replied. I just enjoyed reading it, and then it was really cool to kind of connect over that. So I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah, and I love that he, like in the Cloudy Nights thread, he lays out the components and the cost.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap.
This is like a $3 flashlight.
Yeah.
Or probably $5, I guess, when you're all said and done.
American, yeah.
Yeah. So it's I don't think you can't buy one for this small amount of money. So if you're somewhat handy, this is a pretty doable DIY project, which looks awesome. So
I think you should make one, Shane. This would be right up your alley. You're definitely far more handy than I am, and certainly could knock one of these out. But I was talking to Brett about this as well. I think like a Zippo lighter conversion would be that would be the bee's knees on this one too, right? They get in that direction.
Yeah, that would be pretty sweet. The cool thing about this too is like you can make it whatever color you want then as well. You just buy the color of LED that you're interested in, and away you go. So
yeah. What would be cool? We could make one that's like a cigarette, and you can make one that's like a Zippo. Anyway, all right, keep going.
Yeah. We gotta shut down your creativity here. This is getting out of hand. All right. So the last part of Brett's email. Finally, I have a question for you. Can you describe how you would approach an observing opportunity at a new latitude? For example, I live at about 41 degrees north and will be traveling to 20 degrees north this summer.
Awesome.
At the very least, I'll be bringing my binoculars, but we'll try and bring my AT70ED as well as the AZGTI mount if space allows. How does one go about figuring out which objects to prioritize at a new latitude? I'd love to take advantage of the opportunity and see some things that I may not see from home, or things that are normally close to the horizon at home that will be higher at the more southern latitudes. I'd love to hear how each of you would approach traveling, what resources you use to plan, if there are books or resources that highlight different objects at different latitudes, how you prioritize which objects to make sure you see in the location, etc. So, Chris, you gave a great response. So why don't you chime in with that, and then maybe I'll just add anything if there is anything to add.
Yeah, I think like it's fairly simple in a way. I mean, because you're going to be looking mostly south to grab those new objects that are going to now, an object that was on the horizon at 41 degrees latitude is now going to be, 20 degrees higher up. and then of course an object that was 20 degrees below the southern horizon when it culminates will be at the horizon now. But I think the easy thing to do is just get on the software and just reset your location parameters. So if you're at 41, then reset it to 20 degrees or so. Then you'll see some pretty big objects pop up pretty quick, because there's lots down there in Lupus and Corona Australis and stuff like that. They're going to really jump out at you, and a lot of them are going to be visible in binoculars. Some of the stuff that I would go for would be stuff that maybe is visible at 41 degrees north latitude. For example, NGC 6231, the false comet there on the very bottom of the stinger of Scorpius, is a fantastic target, although you're just barely getting it at 41 degrees north. Like you kind of sort of can see it. But when that thing is another 20 degrees higher, there's some nebulosity in that there, especially if that little 70 millimeter refractor than a UHC filter. You're going to start to be able to pull out that nebulosity if you're able to get to a dark site. So a little bit of combination of new objects and then re-exploring the objects that maybe you've seen before. Same thing with something like the Lagoon Nebula is here. It's pretty far down, Shane, sort of cut in amongst the trees here when I observe it. But if I went to 20 degrees south, then that thing is going to be, like halfway to the zenith, just about, right?
Yeah,
so that's going to really, really give you a different perspective. Objects like the like the Cat's Paw Nebula and the Lobster Nebula and Cluster, Pismus 24 is in there too. I mean, those ones are just barely perceptible here in the 40s and 40 to 50 degree latitude range. But you get to that dark site and 20 degrees further south, and you're really going to get a nice view of those. Some books that I would recommend taking a look at might be things like the Caldwell objects. Taking a look if there's any Caldwell objects that are now going to be visible. Take a look at O'Meara's Hidden Treasures. I know you're a fan of that one as well, Shane. And then I think Stephen O'Meara even has a Southern Objects.
Southern Gems, I think.
Southern Gems. Yeah, that's it. I have a copy of that, many from the James Dunlop catalog. So if you look up James Dunlop, you can actually go through. But probably the best resource for that is O'Meara's Southern Gems as well. So those are going to be the resources that I own and use. I'm not sure what your recommendation might be, Shane, or if I've covered it.
Yeah, your response was awesome. I think you hit on all of the key points. The only thing I would add, and this is not a required piece of preparation, but you may want to consider it, and that's just getting a planisphere for that latitude. So the planisphere are those little. It's got like the disc in the middle that sort of rotates, that you align it for the date and time, and then it shows you all the constellations that are in the sky. And you can hold this thing up over your head, and it's very easy to see where the constellations are and orient yourself. Traveling from 41 degrees down to 20 degrees will change the look of the night sky quite a bit. So it might be disorienting the first time you're out under that sky, and having one of these resources would probably be handy. If I was traveling, I think I would take one. Now, where to find these? Just do an internet search for like a planisphere in that 20 degree north latitude, and you'll find something. And that could be a handy resource. And then the other thing, using any of the resources that Chris mentioned, I think what I would do is just how I prepare for any of my observing sessions now. And that's, I would take my Pocket Sky Atlas. And then I'd mark it up a little bit with some Post-it notes to say, here's, the object that I want to see in this constellation, and prepare myself so that when I'm under those, those skies and I have a limited amount of time, I'm just,
whipping,
as efficient as possible. I'm cruising through the objects.
Yeah. Now, he was debating whether or not to take the binoculars or the telescope, but the reason why I end up buying my 60 millimeter FS TAC was for these sort of occasions, and the AZ GTI as well. But figure out a way to get that in. It's not a big piece of gear, because between that telescope, the mount, you take an eyepiece or two, and then you're, maybe a Barlow, and you're laughing because, like, maybe just think about focusing on the deep sky. And like for me anyway, with these smaller telescopes, like even my comet catcher, that's my most recent experiences that are sticking out in my head. I'm using a 20, a 12 and a half, and a Barlow. And that's it. I can get up to, around 100 and 125 power, which I find about max for deep sky in a lot of conditions anyway. And, just take a couple of eyepieces and a Barlow. It's, it shouldn't be too bad, and should be able to fit it in. And then when you get to your location, one thing that can be really easy to do that many people don't consider is it can be really easy to find someone to lend you a tripod. I've certainly lent out my tripod on several occasions to traveling astronomers, people that sometimes I don't even know that well, but many of us, Shane, I mean, you can speak for yourself, but we always seem to have tons of old tripods that have maybe seen some better days, but are still serviceable. We have sitting around, and I've lent those out to people that are passing through, and they've always returned them. I've never had an issue, and oftentimes when you're going to a place, you might be able to find someone that will loan you one, or you can get into a camera store, and it always seems like they have that bin by the door that has like $50 tripods and a little AT70 on the AZ GTI. Would only need a very small camera tripod to mount effectively on it. I think it's well worth it to go for it and try to take the scope with you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's there's a lot of ways to do it, but if you can fit the telescope, that's definitely the way to go, in my opinion.
All right, Clint wrote, and we had. I'm not going to read all of the exchanges that I had with Clint. We went down the rabbit hole pretty bad. We started talking about doing a deep dive in Scorpius, and he ended up buying a Takahashi DC 100 millimeter telescope.
Wow. Look at you.
Be careful when you write me, people, because sometimes this happens.
Yeah, you might spend some money.
It's really easy to spend other people's money. No, he was debating on getting a TAC 100 DC or 100 DZ or DZ. And I said, just get the DC. It's like, for me, I bought it. It was an easy decision because I'd read tons of reviews. I already had used several Takahashis, already owned a Takahashi that supposedly isn't even as good as the DC level. And I was like, if the FS is this good, how good is the DC? And it was better. And I just think it's phenomenal telescope. And sure, the DZ, I've read reports that, it's a scooch better still, but it's just like, well, honestly, if the DC had been as good as the FS anyway, even if it was just in that range, I would have been super thrilled. The fact that the DC is that next step. Anyway, I just think it's a phenomenal scope for the price. So yeah. And then Roger linked me into a Cloudy Nights thread about Leslie Peltier and the museum exhibit in Delphos, Ohio. Put the link there. Maybe that could be linked out. It's a pretty cool thread on Cloudy Nights. It seems like the Cloudy Nights episode, for some reason, we had a lot of people sending us Cloudy Nights links, which is super cool. I'd love to go down there and see the Peltier. They rebuilt his observatory in this little museum. It's called, I think it was like a merry-go-round observatory. He could sit in this little building. It was very short. I think he had a 6-inch f8 refractor in there that he had borrowed from the AAVSO or something. And then he had like a tractor steering wheel and an old car seat, and he could kind of turn the wheel, and the observatory would spin around, and he could raise and lower the telescope to observe all areas of the sky. Had it sitting out in a cow pasture or something like that. Anyway, super, super cool. Thanks so much, Roger, for sending that along.
Yeah, that's super cool. Always love the kind of that museum stuff, or old observatories, old telescopes. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah. So while we were chatting with Blake earlier, and then we took a break, and I had an email here from Julian, and Julian had sent us a note and a brief bit about a short piece that was written on him in Sky News magazine, Shane. But he was asking about Bino viewers. He had sent this directly to me, so you haven't seen this.
Mm.
However, I'm not a bino viewer user, Julian. And so, Shane, I didn't know maybe if you could read this. It's a pretty short and succinct email, and he's asking a few questions about bino viewers. Do you want me to read it? Maybe you can try responding
Yeah,
to.
sure.
Okay. So Julian writes, and by the way, Julian, I really appreciate you sending your article. He refers to himself as a novice observer, which I think is fine. I always feel like when it comes to amateur astronomy that we're all kind of in the same boat, though. I always feel like I'm still learning. There's lots of people that are more experienced than me and Shane, and lots of people that maybe have different experiences. And then somebody can come along and they're going to go down a whole different path, and they're already a bigger expert than we're ever going to be in a certain facet of astronomy. But do really appreciate your email, and I really enjoyed seeing the painting that you had done. And he has an awesome constellation T-shirt. I'll stop there. Okay. Julian writes, when you get time, consider responding to these questions about the Orion linear bino viewers, which have a clear aperture of 17.4 millimeters. I use these bino viewers in two telescopes. He has a Zenith Star 81 millimeter with a focal length of 559. And he has, I believe it's an Orion XT10, which is a 10-inch or 250 millimeter aperture telescope, 1200 millimeter focal length. I realize these eyepieces I use should not have a field stop larger than 17.4 millimeter. However, I use a TeleVue 18.2. I think that's the Delos eyepieces, which have a field stop of 19.1. These work super well without any visible vignetting that I can detect. I also use TeleVue 20 millimeter pluses, which have a field stop of 17.1, and these work super well. Questions? Okay, you ready for the question, Shane?
Ready.
We're really putting you on the spot here, Julian and I, so I appreciate this.
Yep.
Question 1. In your view, would 5 millimeter Naglers work in these Orion linear bino viewers? Their field stop is 7 millimeter.
So there's a caveat here that I need to put out right away, and that's that the linear bino viewers are different than what I would say is your standard bino viewer. The linear bino viewers are a different design, and they do not require any kind of like glass path corrector or Barlow to achieve focus. They will work in just about any telescope. And I believe when we had Mark Radici on, I think he's got a pair of these linear bino viewers, not the Orions. I can't remember what brand his are, but not that it really matters. They're all the same similar, in principle. Yeah. So that's the advantage of a linear bino viewer. Now, if I remember correctly, some people complain about, I don't know if it's internal reflections or what, but anyway, regardless of that, higher power in a bino viewer sometimes will also, if there's a slight miscollimation in the bino viewer, higher powers will highlight that miscollimation even more. So where this comes into play is the ability for your eyes or your brain to merge the two images. At lower powers, even if they're miscollimated, your brain will still merge the image. But at higher powers, it becomes more and more difficult for that to happen. So you may run into an issue where you can't merge the two images. Not sure. But as long as you can get past that, the 5 millimeter should work fine. In my bino viewer, mine's not linear, but the shortest focal length pair of eyepieces that I have right now is 6 millimeter. And those are the monocentrics. So they're, a tiny pinhole to look through. They work fine. The other thing that is more critical too at these higher powers is just getting the IPD. So like the distance between your eyes, essentially, you just have to get that. It has to almost be perfect, or else you're going to have some issues too. But yeah, it should work. So good luck if you decide to go down that path. Then 5 millimeter Naglers give you an outstanding field of view. Okay.
So you kind of answered question 3 as well, I think. Okay, question 2. Would the image in the bino viewers be too dark, or would the magnification be too high even on a clear night under Bortle 3?
Well, so yeah, I guess maybe a general kind of critical view of bino viewers is that they take light away. That as the light bounces off the prisms and mirrors within the bino viewer, you lose a little bit of light each one of those bounces, and the views are typically, dimmer than what it would be mono viewing. But what I can say is, just a few episodes ago when you and I came back, Chris, from Grasslands National Park, very dark there. Bortle 1 is probably what that would be classified as. With my bino viewer in a 4-inch refractor, I think it was NGC 4725, if I remember correctly. It's a galaxy up in Coma Berenices. And I was able to see a 13 magnitude and a 13.5 magnitude star within, that are in the foreground of this galaxy, which is really pushing a 4-inch to its limits, even mono viewing. So, you can overcome the loss of light by using lower powers in a bino viewer. So that's what most people do. If you would normally look at an object at 200 times, maybe you back that off to 150 times, and or you'd kind of find your sweet spot. Again, it's a very subjective thing, but the real, I guess, kind of concise answer here is no, it's not too dark to use a bino viewer, but you just may have to dial back the magnification a little bit.
Yeah, and he sort of asked specifically about moon and planets and deep sky objects like open and globular star clusters, as well as planetary nebulas. But I would think kind of that sage advice that you just gave goes that you might just have to play around with them a bit. As long as they work, they should work fine on a variety of objects, because he's got a wide range of instruments there, from an 81 millimeter to a 10-inch. So
yep. Yeah. And then the last question, would the 5 millimeter Neglers work well on the moon and planets? I've never used a 5 millimeter Negler, so I can't really comment on its performance, but as long as you can merge the images in the bino viewer, any 5 millimeter pair should be wonderful to look at the moon and planets, particularly the moon. Like I think the times that I've bino viewed the moon, it really does feel like you're in a spaceship passing by the moon, because both eyes are open and you're just seeing an incredible amount of detail. It really changes the experience of observing the moon. And using that high power, you're going to see all kinds of detail. So I think that would be fantastic.
Okay, last question. Would a pair of 24 millimeter panoptics, which have a field stop of 27 millimeters, present problems with these bino viewers?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they would. I think it's very comparable to my silly pencil Borg here that we've been talking about. So the pencil Borg has 25 millimeters of aperture. The Panoptics, what did he say? 27 millimeters. Yeah. And I noticed that, in fact, I thought that it's actually larger than 27 millimeters. I thought that it was in the closer to 30.
I think the spec is 29, but there's the way they do the optical path folding or something fancy like that. Anyway, 27 is the effect.
Oh yeah. Okay. Anyway, I do notice it quite a bit on my pencil Borg. Like that 3 millimeter difference, it softens the view on the edges. Like there's definitely some vignetting that happens there. So within that linear bino viewer with what is it, 19 millimeters of available, 19.1, yeah, is the field stop. Yeah, I don't think you'd be happy with the Panoptics.
No, maybe something like the 18 millimeter flat field eyepieces that are around these days might work well. What do you think? Something like that?
Yeah.
That'd probably be max.
Usually if you exceed the field stop by a millimeter or two, it's not bad.
He has the 18.2s, so I think he's got it dialed in there. I think that's the sweet spot. And I've never looked through those Delos before, but he didn't say there were Delos. I'm making an assumption. I don't think anybody else makes an 18.2 eyepiece.
No, I think those are the Delights. The
Delights, is that?
Yeah. The longest Delos is 17.3, and then the Delight has the 18.2.
All right, yeah, I'm not that familiar with those lines clearly, but I've read amazing things about the 18.2. So I think he's nailed it with that, and I honestly think going to another eyepiece just isn't going to give a satisfying review regardless, because he's kind of got one there that is reportedly one of the best optical designs to the edge in this kind of range of focal lengths that we'd be looking at recommending anyway. So yeah, you've kind of already achieved that goal there, I think, Julian.
Yeah. The 18.2 is, I think, widely considered to be the best performer in the entire Delight range. And, that's saying a lot because that's a really nice set of eyepieces.
Yeah. I'd like to look through them someday, but yeah. Well, thanks, Julian. Thanks for the email there. We had some communication from Phil in the UK as well. And he's back to doing some observing, was asking me some questions about coma correctors, but perhaps we can move along to closing this show out. Shane, do you have anything left to add?
No, Chris, that's all I have.
All right. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We're always excited to get your observing emails or questions or comments or whatever you want to actualastronomy@gmail.com. And we're on Patreon. If anybody wishes to support us, we always appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.